Bueno, va a ser sencillo, va a ser preguntas que vais a hacer vosotros y él os responderá. Y yo tengo que decir que el que tendría que estar aquí es un amigo mío que se llama Pedro Molinero, que él curiosamente colecciona props originales de las películas y que posee un casco hecho con el molde que hizo este señor para Darth Vader. Pero bueno, al no estar él, pues el señor Huevo y yo vamos a intentar coordinar esta charla. Por ahí no tenéis micro ni nada, ¿no? No os han dado, no hay un micro inalámbrico para pasaros ni nada, ¿no? Bueno, pues yo voy a ir para bajar para ir pasándose.
Hola, yo quería saber...
Hola.
Quería saber cuál es el trabajo que más orgulloso estás dentro de la saga de James Bond.
The first James Bond film I worked on, I did a tiger shark that Jaws, the character, fights with in the shark pool. You also see the same tiger shark swim up to the actress. But I've worked on 9 James Bond movies now, and there is so much work, including the bed for Octopussy, the ice bed for Die Another Day, and the ice jet in that same film. There has been so much work over 9 James Bond movies that it's hard to mention all the work. There is just so much.
Sí. Quería preguntar si en relación ahora que se hacen todos los efectos especiales a nivel digital y demás, ¿cómo se adaptó él? Y si ha cambiado mucho su forma de trabajar, si también él ya ha comenzado a trabajar menos a partir de que todos los efectos se hacen de forma digital, en fin, un poco pues cómo se ha adaptado él a ese medio nuevo, desde que empezaron finales de los 90 y demás, en qué medida ha afectado su trabajo y pues, o si se ha sabido adaptar bien y ha seguido trabajando, en fin, y en qué forma se ha transformado su trabajo pues, a ese nuevo medio, o a esa forma de llevar a cabo los efectos especiales.
The fact that there's CGI now makes the filmmakers want to do more work. Like, we'll build a set up to a certain level and then they'll go up a lot further. Also with CGI, what we often do is we'll sculpt a creature or something like that, and then they will actually do a laser copy of that creature we've sculpted and bring it to life with CGI. So in fact, the CGI can mean that we do a lot more work on a film because they're far more ambitious as to what they will do.
Cuando creaste el casco de Darth Vader, ¿cómo fue lo de que no era simétrico? ¿Se fue hecho adrede o no se pudo hacer simétrico totalmente? El problema es que... Y luego también lo de los ojos, que eran rojizos en el episodio 4 y en el resto no. ¿Eso se hizo a posta o fue casualidad?
Initially, when the Vader was sculpted, it was slightly not quite symmetrical because we didn't want it to look like a robot, like some of the other characters in the film. It had to have a more human look to it.
Si esta es una nave consular, ¿dónde está el embajador? Comandante, registre a fondo esta nave hasta que encuentre esos planos y tráigame a los pasajeros. Quiero vivos.
From the first Star Wars film, there were slight changes made to Vader. It was still the original sculpt, but they flattened off the helmet in Empire Strikes Back and they put a bigger chin vent in and they finished the paint in a much more polished way.
¿Desactivaron sus hombres la hipervelocidad del halcón milenario?
Sí, milord.
Bien. Prepare el abordaje y las armas para el asalto. Sí, mi lord.
I'll tell you a little bit about the way I sculpted Vader. The mould makers on the film took a mould of Dave Prowse, who was in the suit, and cast it in plaster. From the fact that I started with the head of Dave Prowse, who was in the suit, I knew that whatever I sculpted on the head would fit back onto him, but I had to have at least 1/4 of an inch of clay on at the lowest point. Do you understand that question? Yeah, what it basically means that the plaster head, when I sculpted the clay on top to create Darth Vader, I had to have at least, the very least, 1/4 of an inch, that much. So that when it's cast in fiberglass, you know that it will then, the thickness of the cast, it will always go back onto his head. Originally there was a front to the mask and a back, but because Dave Prowse was so claustrophobic within it, they discarded the back of the mask and he just wore the front. The mask was sculpted first, moulded and cast in plaster, and then on top of the plaster I did the helmet. It was after that I went on to the full plaster cast of his body to do the armour, which was a chest, shoulder bells and the shins.
Yo quería preguntar, es muy complicado trabajar en el cine norteamericano en una gran saga como puede ser James Bond o la Guerra de las Galaxias. Y me imagino que se recibirán mucho tipo de presiones, indicaciones, en fin. A la hora de la libertad, ¿cómo es?
On the original Star Wars, it was such a tight budget film on the first one. It was only a $4 million movie, and everything I had to do straight off. There were no concept work done on my behalf. With the Stormtrooper, Vader, and all the other work, I had one go at it, and that was all. I had an indication of the design that was wanted, but I had license to put my work into it from the fact that I was taking it from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional, which is seen from all sides, not just one angle.
¿Cuál ha sido la obra, la configuración más compleja, la que más ha tenido que rehacer, ha tenido más versiones, un trabajo que le haya costado, que haya tenido una especial dificultad? Sí, una de las creaciones, sí, para las películas de la terror.
I think probably the film I worked on where there was so many changes was the first Superman film that was made. The reason being that the script was changed 4 times, the designer was changed 3 times, no decisions were made, and I worked on the film for 6 months, and every single piece of work I did was scrapped. The last break on the film, I went off of the film for 2 months. The film moved from Shepton Film Studios to Pinewood Studios and was finished off there, and I went back on the film for 2 months, and everything I did was filmed on.
¿Alguno de esos trabajos que hizo para Superman?
The film that I actually did on Superman in the end was what I call bread and butter work. It was huge ice shards for the Fortress of Solitude. So it was quite boring work, but I got paid.
Voy a preguntarle preguntarle sobre Indiana Jones, sobre el arca en sí, que es una cosa. Le voy a preguntar cuál fue, digamos, cómo estaba hecha, vamos, si había algo dentro, si no había nada dentro.
On Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, there was a scene where Indiana Jones goes down into the snake pit and there is confronted by a cobra. When they shoot from the back of his head, it's a live cobra and there's a piece of glass across. But when they film from the back of the snake towards Indiana Jones and you see his terrified expression, it was the snake the cobra that I sculpted. You could say that on the ark there were two of us that worked. I did all the detailing around the ark and a friend of mine did the figure, the angel on the top.
Ya te dije que todo iría bien.
On the Temple of Doom, the heart that is bucked out from the victim, I sculpted. And I went to, they set it up that I'd go and see a heart surgeon at the hospital. And he invited me to go to open heart surgery the next day, and of course I declined. The opening sequence on the Indiana Jones film where they're in the Obi-Wan club, you see the Paramount Mountains, and then they come out back from that and there's the dragon, and then it rolls off and they're shooting through it. Well, the original one that I did, when the dragon went right around the whole gong and the Paramount Mountains were in the middle, but the art department had got the scale of the mountains wrong, so I had 2 weeks on that, and then what was seen on the screen I had 2 days to do. There was a lot of other work that I did. The elephant's head that Indiana Jones swings down a level, I sculpted, and he puts his whip around the actual trunk and swings down to the lower level. Another job that I actually did on it was in the banquet scene. There were some dancers in front of a horse, and I did 2 of them handed. There was musicians on one side with a horse there, and I carved them both in polystyrene, and they were painted to look like sandstone.
Hola, yo quería preguntar si nos puede contar de algún proyecto en el que esté trabajando o vaya a trabajar en un futuro próximo.
I've just finished on Thor 2, having worked on it at Shepperton Film Studios for 5 months. And before that I worked on the latest Bond film, Skyfall, where I carved a 5-foot-high Chinese lion. They did 6 of them and painted them in bronze to go in the casino scene where Bond's trying to get away from the baddies, and he climbs up the bronze lion that I carved to get away. Last year I worked on a film with Johnny Depp called Dark Shadows, which is a vampire film. A bit strange, but after that I worked on Snow White and the Huntsman, and I did the griffin that spews the milk into the bath where the Wicked Witch bathes. And much other work on that. And the last film I worked on last year was Anna Karenina. I did a lot of the work in the theatre.
Has desafiado a la naturaleza y le has robado su fruto más hermoso.
Quería preguntarle, pues, desde que él comenzó, 60-70, la evolución, los materiales que emplea, digamos, cómo se cambian mucho las técnicas, los materiales que emplea en sus creaciones.
No, the props are still made when we sculpt, they're still made in the same traditional manner, all made by hand, and obviously from the designs that are provided. Sometimes the designs are very good, and other times we don't get much more than a scribble.
Muchas gracias por haber venido, muchas gracias a Brian Muir y muchas gracias por la ayuda del señor Huevo. Thank you very much.
Gracias.